Hey indie filmmakers, I'm Nick Bodmer.
I'm Griffin Hammond, and on this week's episode, Nick has produced his first tutorial video, so let's see if there's any room for improvement.
Plus your questions about the usefulness of a monopod, editing and backing up footage, and capturing the eclipse in 360 degrees. So, I made a little tutorial video, and you're someone who's done many of these, so I was thinking maybe you could take a look and let me know what you think and maybe help me make it a little better before I release it.
Yeah, I was surprised you made this. You haven't actually put this out yet, right?
I have not. So after our last episode, when we both ended up buying the exact same portable hard drives, and I said I was going to rip the internal drive out of that portable hard drive, I did one and thought that was easy, but only because I looked up how to do it. And then I decided, why not make a quick little video explaining how to take these hard drives out.
And I found it really useful. I don't know if you intended this, but I loved that there was like a little bit of suspense in there, because you show us early on the tools that we need, which is kind of a standard tutorial video trope.
Okay.
Like, here are the things you're going to need, and you do that. But the weirdest thing is you need a chopped up credit card. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So there's a little bit of suspense in the video, like, what is this going to be used for? And then when you finally use it to remove the cover, it's such a great payoff. I mean, I know it's not like a dramatic piece of work, it's just a tutorial video, but there's something really satisfying about that.
You know, I had not thought of that, but perhaps we can apply the story circle to the tutorial video.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, a tutorial video does kind of follow a dramatic model. You are the protagonist with a problem that you have to go and solve, and there's some challenges along the way, and you did it.
So I tried to make it pretty short. I think from the time I hit record to the time I hit stop was about 6 minutes long or so, and I got it down to about 3, but I feel like maybe it could be tighter even. I don't know what you think.
I mean, you made some jump cuts where appropriate. You clearly cut out some stuff, but I thought the pace moved along pretty well. You knew what you were talking about, so I didn't feel like it dragged. I feel like that's the problem with a lot of tutorial videos that feel too slow, is that the person just doesn't know what they're talking about, or they're rambling a little bit. But I didn't feel like that in your video.
Yeah, basically I cut 2 minutes out from when I hit record to when I hit stop.
Okay, cool. And so is there anything about it besides the pacing? I mean, I think the pacing's fine. Is there anything else you worried about that you felt like it wasn't up to par?
Yes. Let me tell you what the things I'd like to fix, and then I'd love your honest critique of what you thought worked, what doesn't, what maybe I can fix in the edit, or maybe what to think about for next time. I don't love the way I kind of forgot about the camera sometimes, and my hands get in the way, and I try and fix that when I can, when I noticed when I was doing the actual tutorial, but I'm not sure the camera setup was perfect. I'd like to re-record the audio, so that audio is just straight out of the camera with no good mic or anything. Today we are going to shuck or remove the drive from a Western Digital Easy Store 8 terabyte hard drive. So I'm thinking I might go in and re-record all the audio. The only problem with that is then I'm going to lose some of the natural sound, but maybe I can edit them together. So we'll see how that works.
Because that is I don't think the audio is bad. Like, it doesn't really get in the way. Like,
it doesn't elevate it though to a more professional piece.
Yeah, you're perfectly audible. The tutorial video does what it needs to do. It teaches you everything you need to do. But there's something about the moment a video starts and we hear that audio, even a lay person, when they hear that audio that has kind of the background reverb and noise, and it doesn't sound perfectly crystal clear, it just kind of communicates immediately, like, this is not professional.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I don't think you need to for a functional reason. I think you just need to for a credibility reason put in some better audio. I also think that you could get away with this audio if you started with good audio. Like, if it was you on camera at the beginning just saying, hey, Nick Bodmer here, and today I'm going to show you how to install the Western Digital. And then if it went to bad audio, I mean, it's not even bad audio. It's just a little bit subpar. But if you went to that other audio, I think people would forgive you because they would have already decided, oh, this guy knows what he's doing.
I see what you're saying. So I can just, like, look into the camera right now and say, hey, Nick Bodmer here, and I'm going to show you how to remove a hard drive from a Western Digital Easy Store external hard drive.
And that's one thing I felt like the video was kind of missing, is just a little bit of context about why I'm watching you do this.
And I guess my thought was the context would come, one, from the description, and two, from if anyone clicked on this video, they would have searched for how to remove.
Right, they would have been
hard
looking
drive.
for exactly this, yeah.
Right, but I see what you're saying. And you would do it like a stand-up, just like straight into the camera, explain it, or...
Yeah, I think I would just talk right into the camera, say who you are, what you're doing today, and just give them some expectation of what they're watching. So when they settle in for a 3-minute video, they don't leave when they find out it's not what they expected it to be. Like, they know exactly what it is when they start watching.
Makes sense.
Also, because I think at the end of the video, you talk about installing this in a NAS, which, remind me again, was a network attached storage?
You got it. Good job.
Yeah. But I think it was kind of implied throughout the video that that's what you were going to do, but it's not like explicitly clear that that's a good reason to be doing this.
So the intro
tutorial
should introduce myself, explain what I'm doing, and explain why you might want to do it.
Right, yeah. And I think it's good to think of it that way, because you're right that the majority of your audience may have landed on this because they were searching for specifically this thing. But your audience is always a little bit broader than you think it is.
Sure.
And in the case of we're doing this podcast, there will be podcast listeners that land on the video and maybe have no interest in this hard drive, but would be willing to watch a tutorial video that you put together, and they may just need a little bit of context at the start.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. What else? What do you think?
Well, I think earlier when we were talking about this, you were a little bit worried that it was only shot with one camera angle.
Mm-hmm.
And you thought about, maybe setting up a second camera, which has always been a challenge for me. I try to do that a lot of times, do 2 camera angles, but a lot of times I'm doing videos about a camera.
So you need a lot of cameras.
Yeah, so a lot of times I just have to cheat those second angles, shoot them not at the same time. I liked how efficient your video was. You really don't need a second camera angle. I don't really know where it would come in. I think just having a little bit of visual diversity, like throwing in a shot of yourself at the beginning, could help.
Yeah. If I were going to set up a second camera angle, tell me if this logic makes sense. I probably would have done one on a 90-degree from the current camera angle, which was already in kind of a 90 from me, so it would have kind of put my face in what I was doing in the frame.
Yeah, I think putting your face in is good, because humans like watching other humans. So I do that in a lot of my tutorial videos, especially when I struggle with what the B-roll would be. Like if it's just how to set up your GH5 camera, there's not a whole lot to look at besides, it's functional. We're going to look at the camera, we're going to look at the screen, but there's not really that much interesting stuff to feast your eyes on. And so I think just having a camera angle that includes your own face talking, that's a lot more interesting to look at than just hands moving around.
And what do you think about the angle that I did use? Would you have gone a little higher? If I were going to do anything, I would have maybe kicked the camera up a little higher, shooting down a little more instead of across.
I think we could all day come up with different subjective ways to make this more artistic. I'm sure, yeah, if you shot it from directly above, it was straight down, that could be very interesting. But does it serve the purpose of teaching better? I don't know. I think this angle does the job it needs to do.
And what do you think? I was going to ask you about the music. What do you think of the music choice there?
I was fine with the music. I guess I thought maybe it was a little peppy.
You sent me another alternate choice I never listened to. Should I go grab that, you think?
You could play with it. I sent you one of my classics that I like to use from an artist named Chris Zabriskie, and the song is called Mario Bava Sleeps In a Little Bit Later Than Expected, which is a great title for a song.
By Chris Bava, B-A-V-A?
Yeah.
Sleeps.
I like everything that Chris Zabriskie does. The only downside to much of his music is that, one, it all kind of has a similar tone, so it may only work for one particular kind of thing. You may not be able to get a lot of emotional range. But also his music, this is kind of a good and bad thing. His music very slowly progresses over a long period of time. So that's great if you need to fill a lot of time, but it also takes a while to get to kind of a nice payoff. I'd cut out half the song just to move it along a little bit quicker. But It may be more mellow than what you have. I don't know if it's the right fit, but it's just another option to look at.
All right, well, I'm importing it right now.
The one you used is that a Kevin MacLeod track?
It is.
Yeah.
So actually, I went back to our previous episode discussing where to get royalty-free music, and I grabbed that link, and I did it pretty quick, but it sounded good. Did you notice the cut at the end? I wanted it to end on the end of the song, so I do a little cut right here, if you can see my screen.
I did not. Let me listen. Well, yeah, it's probably good that I didn't notice the cut.
Exactly. And that is a bare drive ready to go in your nest.
I did not hear the cut. It's a good job.
Excellent. That's what I want to hear.
Would you cut it right on the beat or something?
I cut it right on the beat.
Yeah. I mean, that usually does it. You cut right on a beat, and it's impossible to hear it.
So you can see I've dropped some markers. So basically at the end there, I just went and dropped a marker on the every downbeat, and then I figured out how many I needed to cut out to get the ending close to the end, and just dropped a cut there and dropped in nice and easy.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes I'll do a little crossfade to hide a cut, but yeah, usually if you pick a good beat, it doesn't even need any sort of fade.
Yep, and I didn't. I just went to town. All right. Now, one of the other things me and you were talking about before we started recording was, do I need some titles in this? And what's your thought on titles for a project like this?
You know, my feeling is the minimal use of titles possible. I think titles can add some professionalism, but at the same time, no need to do more work than you need to.
Sure.
So I'd have to watch it again, but it didn't strike me as like, whoa, it's missing some on-screen information. I mean, a lot of times I use it to kind of cover up almost mistakes I've made. If I failed to convey something fully, or if it's hard to convey through voice, then yeah, maybe when you list the parts you need, maybe that's helpful or something. I don't know.
So I was thinking about doing a title, and I actually messed around for a little bit. I can never make a title that looks good. So could you just walk me through how you go about putting a basic intro title together, and how you...
Sure.
Because your titles always look great, and mine don't. I may not use it, but I would love to just go through the process.
Oh, yeah. So I'm actually looking at your screen right now. If you just go up to... You know where the little title place is in Final Cut?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they have like a ton of animated things, but I just
So
go
would you
straight
recommend
to...
Boogie Lights?
No,
right
don't
here?
do Boogie Lights.
Look at that. What could be better?
Yeah, I ignore all the animations and flashy things. I just go straight to Custom, which is just the blank, simple one.
All right, I'm dragging that in.
So Custom is just a simple piece of text in the middle of the screen, boring font. I don't even know. What's the default font that it picks for you?
Yeah, the font for it right now is... Let me switch over to the title details. Helvetica.
Okay. I mean,
And
Helvetica can look good.
I actually just lost all... I'm on a published parameters thing. Let's see, I think I want this screen. Here it is. Yep, Helvetica regular at size 72, and it says title.
So, first, I just pick a font I like. And recently, I seem to be gravitating towards fonts that are all caps. Like, there's a font I like called Babus New.
Okay.
And I also like a font called Gotham. I don't know if you have either of those.
How you spell Babus? Is it B-A?
B-E-B-A-S.
Yep. I've got Babus New. Oh, I see.
Yeah,
It is nice.
you could try that one. I mean,
Okay.
it can be limiting to have a caps-only font. It looks nice. It looks very professional to me. But it's also less legible. We actually can read fonts faster when they have lowercase.
Okay.
Just because we can identify the shapes a little bit quicker. But especially if all you're writing is like simple titles, I think all caps can look good. And I don't know, put it in the appropriate spot on the screen, make it the right size. Sometimes I add a drop shadow, but I've actually kind of stayed away from that recently and gone with more
What
of
about transparency?
So I actually I play around with the compositing modes. Do you know what those are?
Mm-mm. I do
If
not.
you go back to like the video settings on that title,
Yeah.
there's a compositing section.
Ah, blend mode and opacity.
Yeah, it's the same
Okay.
place where you could change the opacity. And I'll often switch it to soft light.
Interesting.
And assuming you're dealing with you have a white font right now, right?
I have a white font, and it's pretty hard to see now because the first part of the video is a white box.
Right. Well, if you move it over to like on top of the wood table, you'll see the way it interacts with the background.
Is this what you used in hand cut?
I did, yeah.
It kind of looks hand cutty.
And also now switch to overlay, another compositing option.
That's a little more legible in this situation.
I also like the way that looks, but sometimes I kind of want a combination of the two. So actually what I want you to do is using hold down Option and drag the text in your timeline. It'll create a second, it'll duplicate it.
Drag the text or drag the title?
Drag the title itself in the timeline.
Oh, and stack them?
Yeah. And then make one of them overlay, one of them soft light. And I find myself doing that a lot to kind of get some transparency, a little bit of the action of both compositing modes, but also it's usually a little bit more visible because you have two of them stacked.
Okay, very cool.
But yeah, nothing stuck out to me that needed a description. I mean, I could see in these kinds of videos and tutorials, often if you're talking about the model number of the hard drive, it might be helpful to actually write down 8 terabytes, write down the cost or something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But this was such a visible, I mean, this was such a, like, you're doing it with your hands in front of us. It was very clear, I think, just the way you shot it. I was
surprised how easy it was. So I go through the video and I show I put these 4 pieces of gift card that have been chopped up in there, and that's exactly where the 4 clips are, and it just makes it so easy to pop it off.
Right.
So
maybe that was actually something that built that was actually something that built suspense, like I said. I suppose on the flip side of that, it also added some confusion, because I suppose you could have made it clearer exactly why you're using them up front
beforehand.
It was kind of a fun payoff, like I said, but it also, I suppose, if you are like really trying to do this yourself, it could be a little bit confusing. Like, why am I putting them there? Maybe I'm just going to put them wherever I feel like, because it's not entirely clear in the video.
Now, did you notice it was also pretty overexposed?
Yeah, I'm seeing that with the very white box.
And the white hard drive at the end. So actually, I'm running an exposure compensation. I've got the highlights down negative 13% to help save it a little bit. It was even worse, if you can imagine. Yeah, it's very bright, but it ended up okay, I think.
Right. And this is one of those cases where, sure, you'd love to get the exposure perfect, but it didn't impact my ability to learn from the video.
Cool. Well, should we answer some questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, also, before we do that, I just want to show you, I actually got my solar eclipse sunglasses in the mail.
Oh, cool.
Did you get yours yet?
I have not gotten them yet, but they are on their way. They did ship, so I got lucky there.
I tried to point mine out the window and just see if I could see. I wasn't actually looking at the sun. I was just looking at, I think the sun was behind clouds. I was looking at very bright clouds. And I couldn't see even anything there. So I guess you really do have to be looking at the bright sun.
Oh, and they just look like black?
Yeah, I still have not seen anything. I mean, I'm looking at my own softbox light in front of me, and I don't see anything through these glasses.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so they really...
Did you get a filter for your camera as well?
I did, and I'm immediately realizing I don't know why I didn't order 2. Because of course, if I'm going to go do this, I'm going to be shooting with 2 cameras.
Big mistake.
I'm not even sure exactly what I bought. So I think you had mentioned that... Where'd you order yours from, your glasses?
B&H.
So, and then after you ordered them, I think B&H sold out, right?
Yep.
And Adorama sold out. I mean, there were a whole bunch of places that were sold out. I ended up finding mine on Newegg. Mm-hmm. Which I haven't ordered anything from Newegg in a long time.
That's my go-to for computer parts.
Yeah, and strangely they were selling the stuff. I don't know if they're in stock now, but I ordered them from there, and I think also from Newegg I found a filter, but it wasn't for a camera. I was having trouble finding camera filters almost anywhere. A lot of them were sold out. But I found this telescope filter, which I gotta think is the exact same thing, right?
Yeah, you would think. But it might not mount properly, though.
Right, it has this like weird plastic mount, but it kind of looks like it's big enough to cover a lens if I just take out this plastic ring that it's in. So I'm kind of hoping maybe I can just rip this thing apart and I have the little DIY
Griffin's
filter I can tape on.
Getting the saw out again, going after his lenses and filters. That's funny.
But yeah, I'd probably need to go get another one. So anyway, that's my sharing corner this week.
That's nice. You want to start us out with this first YouTube comment?
Sure. Yeah, this was about last week's episode. So last week we were talking about the solar eclipse coming up, and this YouTube comment from 2-Bit Da Vinci Tech. His name is Chris, and he said that he loves our video, but he says we pronounced flange and corona different than he was taught. I think you were actually saying corona differently.
I said corona, maybe?
You said corona, yeah.
And that's probably wrong. That's why I wanted you to read this comment. I was like, I don't want to read it wrong again in the comment about me saying it wrong.
Well, and I just now pronounced it like the beer, Corona, but I don't know. I assume that's what it is. I don't. So the Corona is, my understanding is it's the. Am I right? Is it the ring of solar like flares coming off of the sun that you can't see normally?
I believe it's basically the outer atmosphere of the sun.
Right. Which, yeah, you can see during the solar eclipse. The only time you could see it. So maybe it's Corona, maybe it's Corona. Who knows? Well, I say who knows, but I'm sure there's a right answer.
Someone knows, I bet.
And then, have I been pronouncing flange wrong? That's how I say it. But is it flange?
Is it flange? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know.
The corona, or corona, is an aura of plasma that surrounds the sun and other stars.
Right.
I think I would have said flange correctly had I not heard you say flange and I just rolled with it.
Yeah.
But obviously I screwed up.
It's one of those weird words that I'm sure if it was by itself, I probably would say flange. And when I see it, we talk about flange distance, the distance between the sensor and the lens, the end of the lens. For some reason, when I see that, I want to say flange distance, not flange distance. I don't know why.
Because you're an idiot. And so am I.
It's like when I talk about the nuts called pecans, I'll say pecans.
Not pecan.
But I'll say, when I'm talking about pie, I'll say pecan pie.
Yeah, well, you are from Georgia, so you should know about that.
That must be my southern upbringing, yeah.
We got an email from Moritz. He says he's filming with the Panasonic G7, and he bought a monopod to stabilize his shots. And he said he's read to turn off image stabilization when using a tripod, but he wants to know, is that true for a monopod as well? He's done a little bit of testing himself, and he thinks it looks better and more stable with the image stabilization on.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I think that's the key thing, is we can tell you all day what our experience has been, but if you test something out and you like the way it looks, I think you should always do that.
Yeah, I really appreciate that he tested it and kind of put what he was thinking in there, and now is looking for a little validation. I think that's excellent.
Right. Well, so what's been the thing we always do with image stabilization? Like when we shoot weddings.
I mean, I do turn it off when I am locked down on a tripod.
Me too.
Only because what can happen is when you're panning or doing whatever, image stabilization like tries to correct that and then realizes, oh wait, you really are moving, and you can kind of get that jump as it recenters itself. You know, it kind of hits the limit of stabilization and then it jumps back, so it kind of actually messes up some of your movements if you're doing them perfectly on a tripod. It
usually happens at the end of that pan, like you're panning along, everything's going perfectly, and then the moment you stop, the image stabilization says, hey, I think you're supposed to keep moving this way. And it creates that little jerk, yeah. Although, so that's what we do. That's our practice, our best practice. But I'm sure we are basing that off experience that we had with our Sony Handycams in 2001, right?
Right. I definitely noticed it on the GH2 as well.
Okay.
I would notice like, oh, I forgot to turn image stabilization off when I was shooting.
You're right. Now that I think back to my weddings, yeah, with early, like the GH2 and probably maybe the GH3s, I probably did experience that. But I have noticed, I don't know what your experience has been with the G85 and what Moritz's experience is with the G7. But with the GH5, I feel like the image stabilization has come a long way, and it just works nicely even when it's on a tripod.
Oh, interesting. All right, I'll have to try that with my G85. I'm actually shooting a wedding on Tuesday.
So, like, I actually have my image stabilization turned off right now, and when I've had it on during the podcast, I mean, granted, I'm not moving the camera at all, so it hasn't caused a problem at all while it was on. The only reason I have it off, I'm not even worried about what it's going to do. I have it off just because I figure it's probably asking the camera to do less work. I don't know if that's true, but I feel like I'm probably using less battery life if I'm asking the camera to like.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't considered that, but that might be true. My guess is the battery impact is negligible, but I don't know. It could be.
Yeah, especially when the camera's not moving. I'm guessing it probably doesn't hurt the battery life.
But we are kind of ignoring an important part of his question.
That it's not a tripod.
It's not a tripod. It's a monopod. So my thought is, on a monopod, absolutely, I would have image stabilization on because it is going to move quite a bit, even though it's helping you stabilize, but you are not locked down, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're kind of stable in one axis, that like up and down, but you're not stable at all in the other two axes. So yeah, I would still want to have image stabilization on, definitely. Here's a message that we got from my friend Matt, who is actually he's done a lot of wedding videos and photography in the past, but he's actually doing a memorial. Someone has died, and the client has hired him to do a celebration of life video, I guess, to come to the memorial. And he's just wondering, how does he approach such a sensitive event?
That's a tough one, right? I mean, that's one where my unobtrusiveness factor would go way up, right? Basically, fly on the wall.
I mean, yeah, I guess the same. It's not too much different than the way I would go about a wedding in terms of my day of demeanor. I mean, I'm always trying to be unobtrusive, so I wouldn't think, for me and probably for him, I don't think it'd be too hard to enter this environment and act professionally and quietly and politely and get through the day just fine. I think clearly you're going to encounter a lot more emotion, and this is actually interesting. This is something I talked about with some photographers in Singapore, that I don't know if this is more common in Singapore, but I talked to several photographers who do this kind of thing, that there are a lot of memorial and funeral videos being shot. And they were saying that the biggest difference is just in the what the client will do with it after. Because a wedding video, maybe people don't watch their full wedding video right away, but generally people are really excited to get the product. And they're probably bugging you for the product, and when they get it, they're really excited to watch it and share it online. Whereas this kind of video, the client may not want to watch it at all for maybe a long time, maybe a year, maybe a few years. I mean, until they find the strength to sit down and watch that. But it's just as important. They want that record.
Sure.
So I don't know. I guess just recognize that your goal is not to make some perfect piece of art. I mean, this is kind of with wedding videos too. Sometimes I let the art get in the way of what the real job is, which is just recording it, just getting the moment down on video.
That's a good point. It's probably, if you move between the two extremes of an art film and a documentary that is just faithfully reproducing what happens, you probably want to err more on the side of the documentary take,
right?
As opposed to trying to, pull rack focus shots on people crying and things like that.
Right. Yeah, just make sure you capture everyone who was there. We want to see who was there, and
and if there are speeches, obviously, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I would be focused on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Oftentimes at those types of memorials, you'll find like that they've done like a slideshow DVD or something with pictures and things like that. That could be an interesting thing to include as either B-roll or as its own separate video.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff you might want to look for.
And I would think, just like a wedding, it's probably harder to screw this up than you think. Like, they just want to see these people on camera, and like if you go and capture the event faithfully, everything they see is going to satisfy them, the client.
Yep, I agree.
Here's a YouTube comment we got from Paul Akone. It's actually a question for you, Nick. He is currently shopping for a Mac laptop and needs help deciding what to get. So he wants to do video work, and he wants one with the touch bar. Oh, but he's saying no. He's saying the touch bar ones are a little too pricey for him. So is there one that you would recommend if you're trying to be budget conscious?
Sure. All right. Quick primer on the Apple laptop product line up. Okay.
Yeah.
Griffin, do you know the 3 different types of Apple MacBook laptops that exist?
Let's see. I don't. Do they even make the Air still?
They do.
Okay, so there's the Air, there's the MacBook Pro, and is there the
so
regular?
Close. Yeah. So there's
Okay.
the MacBook Air, and the MacBook Pro.
Right.
So for video purposes, you can immediately throw out the MacBook and the MacBook Air.
Yeah.
The MacBook uses
I thought I heard the MacBooks were still were like better. Like they were more like a MacBook Pro. Is that not true?
They now have, so they used to have these Core M processors in it, and now they're called, they are i5s and i7s, but it was just a branding change. It's the same type of processor.
Yeah.
A super low power processor that is just not up to the task of video editing. So
Sure.
I would toss
It's
up
probably
the
great
MacBook
for
line.
battery life. Is that I
Great
imagine?
for battery life. It's
Yeah.
tiny and light. If you're doing anything other than basically video editing, I think the MacBook would be a great laptop. My wife has one. She loves it. The MacBook Air does not have a Retina screen, and they have not updated it in a while. That's another
Yeah.
one to toss out. So we're looking
I
at
will
the
say
MacBook Pro.
I will say I've done video editing on a MacBook Air. Like it can do it. All of these are powerful systems that can do some level of editing, but
Sure.
if that's your primary use.
And would you buy a laptop these days without a Retina screen? Because I would not.
No, now that I have one and I've enjoyed video editing that way, I wouldn't go back.
Yeah, definitely need the high resolution. So, looking at the MacBook Pro, they have a 13-inch and a 15-inch. And the 13-inch comes in 2 different flavors. No touch bar and touch bar. And the touch bar is that it replaces the function row at the top of the keyboard with like an OLED touchscreen that's like context sensitive. Which is cool, but I have read that it's not like a critical thing. So when I bought a new laptop, I got the non-touch bar 13-inch, which I believe starts at $12.99, which I think is pretty reasonable.
And that's probably about as budget conscious as you can get in the MacBook Pro line.
I would agree with that, yeah. The only problem with that one is it only has 128 gigs of storage. It is SSD, nice and fast, but 128 gigs won't do it. So there's a $14.99 configuration that has a dual-core i5, 8 gigs of RAM, a 256 gig SSD, and I think that's a good place to look. So $14.99 is, I think, a pretty reasonable price to get started. The version I am on is that version, but upgraded to 16 gigs of RAM and a 512 SSD. I did use a version that only had 8 gigs of RAM, and I don't think that was really hampering me using Final Cut. So I don't feel like you have to go for the 16, though I think if you can afford the price bump, go for it. But I would definitely upgrade the storage SSD space to 512 before I would go from 8 to 16.
And all these upgrades you have to do through Apple. You can't. They don't allow you to put your own stuff in these computers anymore, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's all soldered onto the motherboard. So what you buy is what you're stuck with. So it's
I'm
great
sure if you
because
were
they're
like
tiny
good
and
at
light, but
I imagine if you were good at like unscrewing a computer and taking apart a bunch of pieces, you might be able to put your own SSD in there.
no, not even anymore.
not
So my old MacBooks, I used to do that. Like I removed the optical drive and put an SSD in its place. So I had a hard drive and an optical drive. It was awesome. These, like the memory chips are soldered onto the motherboard. Like there's nowhere to even put one. So no. So yeah, I would say $14.99 will get you a really good configuration with 256 gig of SSD. If you're gonna have a ton of video and you don't want to deal with external hard drives and things like that, upgrade to 512, and then maybe consider 16 gigs of RAM, but not necessary.
Sure.
I just made up a word. Did you hear that?
Say
Necessary.
that. Necessary.
Which is good. I like that one.
Well, here's another question for you. This one's from Catherine Rush, and at first her question was she's wondering if we could do an episode about basic backup hard drives, network attached storage.
Sounds like a great idea.
But then she landed on our episode 16 and realized that about 20 minutes in, that's kind of what we're talking about. But I feel like we should still revisit this because this is something that I am not always up on, and I lose track of what I should be doing. Last week I said that I started putting things on my new 8 terabyte drive and on Amazon Cloud Drive. So I think, am I following the 3-2-1 rule now? Where I have, is it that I have to have 3 copies in two different locations, or
two different medias and one offsite.
One offsite. So cloud is offsite. I got at least 2.
Yep, it sounds like you're good.
Yeah, and yeah, my 3rd copy is on the computer itself.
Yep.
So is that all I need to do? Or...
That's all you need to do, but I mean, my problem with backups is, like, one, if they're not automated, they're never going to be up to date, right? So that's why I use CrashPlan, which automatically backs up everything on my laptop all the time to the cloud.
Right.
So it's just done, right? Automated, I don't have to think about it. Anytime there's new data, it starts uploading it right away, which is great. And then I have a NAS, which is network attached storage. It's a little box that holds 4 hard drives, and my Apple Mac does Time Machine to that automatically. So I have automatic backups locally, and I have automatic backups to the cloud. And then I also can, manually archive stuff out on that NAS. So I have a directory just full of all my videos I've ever made called Final Videos, like my final cuts.
And what's the primary benefit of having a NAS? It's network attached. Does that mean you can get all of your computers on your network can all back up to it?
That's correct. Yep.
That's exactly why you need it.
I've got my laptop. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you only had one computer and that's all you were ever going to use, an external hard drive would be almost as good. But when I have a desktop and a laptop and an iPad and iPhones in the house, and my wife has a laptop, and they all connect to that. Also, it does some cool stuff because it's always on and running in the background. That means, like, I can go access all those files even when I'm on the go,
right.
And I can just, connect to it over the internet, which is cool.
Yeah. And then is that NAS set up as a RAID or anything?
Yeah, it uses, so it's 4 disks. If any one drive fails, I don't lose my data. I just pop it in a new drive, it rebuilds, and away we go. So
what is that called, a RAID 5?
That is RAID 5, correct.
Yeah.
Technically, I'm using Synology Hybrid RAID, which is their own version, but it's RAID 5, basically.
Yeah. And then I guess if all Catherine was going to do, let's say she doesn't want a NAS, she is just going to back up one computer, she's going to go out and buy a hard drive. She can't get the deal on the 8 terabyte Western Digital that we bought last week because I don't think it's on sale anymore.
It isn't, but that deal has been coming back. It has been around a couple times, so keep your eyes open at Best Buy for that 8 terabyte Western Digital Easy Store, because that's a smoking deal.
Yeah. I mean, if you're just going to go out and buy a hard drive right now, what kinds of things, like, are there brands that are better than others?
Anything you're finding in major stores is probably going to be fine. I would want USB 3 just to be future-proofed. And I would try and buy as big as you can, because what you don't want, which is what has happened to me in the past, is where you end up with 5 different external hard drives, all too small for everything, but you kind of spread things around and move things, and you never know what's on what. You think something's backed up to a different drive, and it's not, so you delete it and you lose it. So, big. That's my suggestion.
Yeah.
Big enough for all your stuff.
Cool. Our final comment today.
Did you decide if you're going to get an NAS, or are you just going to keep living the external hard drive life?
I think I'm okay with external hard drives right now. I guess the only reason I would really need a NAS is, like, if we did our dream of backing up your stuff to my NAS and me backing up my stuff to your NAS.
Yep. Although now I have a 1 terabyte monthly data cap, which is killing me.
Yeah.
So I don't even want your data. I can't afford it.
Right.
Thanks a lot, internet service provider.
Unnamed ISP.
Unnamed ISP. Jerks. Our
final comment today comes from YouTube, from Travis Dunn, and he was talking about our solar eclipse coming up, thinking about shooting it himself, and he's thinking about using his Samsung Gear 360 and actually filming it in 360 degrees. But he doesn't really know how he would cover it, and he's also pointing out that his area won't get to see a total eclipse, so he's hoping someone else in the totality will pull out a 360 camera and do something cool.
My first thought when I read this was, like, a 360 video of the eclipse is going to be pretty stupid, because the sun is going to be so tiny in the field of view of a 360 video that,
that's what I was thinking,
you won't even see anything. But then I was thinking, if you were somewhere interesting where you were basically less about looking at the actual eclipse and more about the reaction of all the people around. Like if you were in a crowd of people, you know, in some way, then that could be interesting just to kind of get a feel for the environment and what happens during the eclipse and kind of get a more of a reactionary video as opposed to, you know, actually trying to show the eclipse.
Right.
So that could be neat.
So many of those articles we looked at suggested that maybe you don't even want to film during an eclipse because it is supposed to be a very emotional, interesting thing. And if it truly is like that, the way that people predict, then if people are reacting in a really emotional way, that could be cool to capture. So think about audio too, how you might get some decent audio to go with that video.
And the only other thing I would think about is, I don't know if the Samsung Gear 360 offers manual exposure mode, but I would want that feeling of it getting darker. I wouldn't want auto exposure to compensate and basically take away the effect of it getting darker. So if you can get into a manual mode, so that as the eclipse happens, you kind of get a feel for that darkness, I think that would be cool too.
Although, see, I've never been in a total eclipse. My understanding is that the exposure is going to change so dramatically from the moment that you have even a sliver of sun still left to nothing. That's a big drop.
Well, Travis indicates that he's only going to see a partial eclipse, but
right. So yeah,
I think in totality, I think it's going to get like nighttime level dark, maybe.
Right.
Even. So yeah,
which would be hard to handle that transition. But you're right.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, that would
something
be
interesting to play with, man. I bet we'll see some pop up on the internet after this eclipse. So.
But to your point, in that 360 video, you'll probably barely even be able to make out the shape of the sun. Like, it's going to be so distant. It's like shooting with a GoPro. Everything is so far away.
Yep, exactly.
So it does have to be about the environment.
We're out of questions.
Yeah, we'll just have to take more next week.
All right. Well, I guess I need to, finish this video because I'd love to be able to put it up with this podcast. So hopefully I have gone and made those corrections that Griffin has suggested and made it available.
Yeah. Where will this be? On your YouTube channel?
I'll put it on my YouTube channel. And I'm sure we'll tweet out a link. We'll put a link in the show notes. And if I haven't finished it, then we'll just cut this part out.
Yeah. Then in the show notes, I'll just put Nick is a big failure. Hey, earlier I was talking about how it was so great there was suspense in your video. Now we've built up suspense. People will have to find out if you made this video or not.
His video in time. We'll find out.
Well, I'll let you go work on it.
All right, thanks. We'll talk to you later.
See ya.
Bye, everybody. What the product should be and how we should produce it.
Hey, let me stop real quick. Andy is freaking out in here for some reason. Andy, get out of here. Get out of here.
Andy, this is the sad part of the podcast, not the part where we meow like crazy.
He's looking up. He's doing this thing where he gets excited about something that's like up above him and he's just freaking out.